What's going on, vinyl community? Welcome to another video with the record spinner. Yes, it is still me despite no beard and shorter hair. Today's video is going to be the first in a series where I talk about my favorite Kiss songs from each studio album. When it comes to the hottest band in the world, us Kiss fans are absolutely passionate and we have strong views on just about anything, whether it's favorite album, lineup, live bootleg, show that we saw, piece of merchandise, you name it, we're gonna have an opinion on it. And I figured the prospect of choosing my favorite songs from each album would be a fun prospect to tackle, give some context as to why these songs are my favorite, and also provide some extra historical context. Honestly, doing this was quite easy because I feel like I've always had this list theorized in my head for the longest time, and it only took me so many years in the YouTube game to execute it. But hey, the mill never runs dry when it comes to crafting Kiss content. And since this is the first entry of the series, this video is going to be focusing on the albums from the 1970s, and there's quite a bit to get through, so enough of the chit chat. Let's jump into what this video is all about. First up, my favorite track from the self-titled debut is Let Me Know. This is the song that goes down in history for being the first song Paul showed Gene when they first met and went on to form Wicked Lester together. That time around, this track was known as Sunday Driver. One of my favorite Kiss arrangement tropes are the trade-off vocals between Paul and Gene, obviously utilized on Shout It Out Loud. And on this track, Gene sings the first and last verse, and Paul handles the middle. Now, the song tails off at around the 2-minute mark, but the outro, which kind of stands out, is this vamp that was typically played as the outro to She or Watching You on the live stage. And that is one of my favorite Kiss musical moments. So couple that with Let Me Know being my favorite song in general on the first album, it's an absolutely killer combo. Next up, my favorite track from Hotter Than Hell is Parasite. Let it be said here that Parasite isn't just my favorite song off the album, but it's probably my favorite Kiss song ever. I think the opening riff is absolutely gnarly. The gang vocals on the chorus are in your face. The little drum breakdown Peter has just before the wicked guitar solo. This track embodies that sort of in-your-face mentality that Kiss had in their early days, and you could definitely tell when you listen to either the studio version or some of the live versions from around 74 to 76. My personal favorite being the undoctored version from Cobo Hall 75, which is on the live outtakes bootleg, where Peter just owns the track. He sounds absolutely on fire. Next up, my favorite track from Dress to Kill is She. This track stems from Gene and Paul's band Wicked Lester, and what a transformation this track underwent. The original version sounds almost Jethro Tull-like with all the flute work, not complaining by any means since I do also love Tull, and here it's more meat and potatoes rock sounding. Plus, if you're a guitar player and you like to play some simple stuff like myself, this song is so fun to play. The riffs are cool, the flow of the middle section is interesting with different riffs and parts being traded off, and as I mentioned with Let Me Know, the outro of that track typically tagged onto the end of this when it was played live. Next up, my favorite track from Destroyer is Flaming Youth. While this is one of the more traditional, harder rocking sounding tracks from Destroyer, producer Bob Ezrin kind of Frankensteined this composition from parts of other members' contributions, most notably one of the riffs being lifted from Gene's demo, Mad Dog. The song's use of a calliope during the final chorus gives the track a cinematic yet circusy quality to it. Aside from the track being absolutely rocking, I love the message behind the lyrics as it's all about being young, exuberant, and carefree. It's the kind of anthem that any adolescent going against all odds could identify with, and even those who lose youth over time can feel empowered while hearing it. This track to me is one of the great underdogs of the Kiss catalog. Next up, my favorite track from Rock and Roll Over is Mr. Speed. This is a subtle piece of sexual innuendo from Paul, one that didn't quite drastically change from its original demo form, and is about being able to pick up women very quickly, hence the moniker that makes up the song's title. Now, take away the lyrical connotations, I feel that the instrumentation has this cool yet kick-ass yet feel-good connotation. The riff and the verses kind of remind me of T-Rex's Bang a Gong, and the harmonies sprinkled in the arrangement are just pure ear candy. Next up, my favorite track from Love Gun is Almost Human. If there is a demon track that comes in second best next to God of Thunder, it's this one. And this time around, Gene took the lead for writing this one and drew inspiration from one of his idols, Lon Chaney, in his silent film West of Zanzibar. The lyrics are full of horrific imagery. Gene's vocal delivery is absolutely aggressive sounding, like he is a monster that's actually almost human. I love how instead of a typical lead guitar solo, you just have all this sort of distorted dissonance panning back and forth in the stereo spectrum, complementing the nature of the song. And to add some extra flair, there's some congas and some falsetto-ish harmonies that just add to the devilish charm of this track. Even though Alive 2 is a live album, we still gotta account the fourth studio side, and my favorite track off of that is Larger Than Life. This track is very much a double entendre because the Kiss ethos at the time, in terms of the personas and what they were trying to portray, was indeed larger than life, but in essence, it's basically Gene singing about his own love gun and how big it is. Typical Kiss poetry. Musically, it's a cool, grooving number, and Peter Criss is the MVP with his drum sound and drum fills sounding totally John Bonham-esque. Such a great track. Now we're going to break into some solo album territory, and my favorite track from the Paul Stanley solo album is Wouldn't You Like to Know Me? Now, Paul Styl obviously worked within the romantic angle akin to his persona on his solo album, and a lot of people would say that his was the most Kiss-sounding album, which I do agree, but even his own songs leaned a lot towards melody, and with a track like this is Paul going full power pop, which I think he does very well. On this track, he drew inspiration from one of the foundational bands of the power pop genre, and that's the Raspberries, and apparently Paul took elements from their songs Tonight and Ecstasy for this track. I love me a good pop sensibility backed by crunchy guitars, and this track succeeds with that. My favorite track from the Gene Simmons solo album is See You Tonight. As much as I dig tracks like Almost Human, I love it when Gene expresses his more melodic side. And maybe my opinion is biased because I love the Beatles, and this track, which interestingly dates back to around 1969, has a strong Lennon-McCartney type feel to it, and honestly, it's the foundation of Gene's writing. I mean, listen to other tracks on this album and some of the older demos in his Vault box set, and you definitely sense that. Not only is this my favorite track off of Gene's solo album, but I think it is one of Gene's best compositions ever. My favorite track from the Peter Criss solo album is I Can't Stop the Rain. Peter does what he did best on his solo album. There's a strong R&B influence along with some 70s tinged easy listening ballads, but this track is a monolith compared to the rest of the album. I feel like this track unintentionally tries to recapture the magic of Beth with the piano and orchestrations, and I have to say I love the piano chord progression, but there is this element of bombast with the inclusion of drums and an electric guitar solo. It's almost like a power ballad on steroids, and it makes for a fitting climactic finish to the album. My favorite track from the Ace Frehley solo album is Snowblind. I always loved this song when I was a kid. Hell, the band that I was in during middle school did a cover of it. It's kind of funny how a middle schooler like myself loved this song despite the subject matter of the lyrics, which Black Sabbath covered in their song of the same title. I always liked how badass the main riff is and the long drawn out chords and the chorus. It sounds gritty and almost sludgy. And then once that steady groove is established, it just double times it during the instrumental solo break in the middle, and it's sensational. It's a track like this that gives most Kiss fans the unanimous opinion that Ace's album was the best out of the four. Last but not least, my favorite track from Dynasty is Charisma. I always thought the instrumentation of this track sounded cool, but it was only later that I found out that it was loosely based on the Wicked Lester track Simple Type, which the band did play in the New York clubs, and after listening to the live version from the Daisy, it makes total sense. Now, what's interesting is that Kiss's business manager at the time, Howard Marks, who came from a jingle background, jotted the initial chorus line, and Gene wrote verses around that line. It has a sort of seductive feel with him asking what is it that draws the person in question in, but it has a slight demonic touch with mentions of being the master of one's soul and asking if it's his fire or flame that drives them insane. So there you guys go. That is part one of my favorite Kiss songs from each studio album from the 1970s. Now, keep your eyes peeled for when part two goes up, which will be centered on the 1980s. And my big question for you guys is, what are your favorite Kiss songs from each of the 1970s studio albums? Please drop a comment down below. I'd love to know. And if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead, give it a like, and subscribe to the channel. See you guys in the next video. And most importantly, keep the records spinning.